the widow is completely not only the grief component that you're talking about, but she's unable to just buy groceries. All of her accounts are locked. They have plenty of money, everything's locked. She's behind on her mortgage. Right now, she's at risk of losing everything when they literally have plenty of money. And the family was looking for something else. It was just accidentally they came across the trust documents in a drawer in the boat at the harbor.
Taking a minute to be myself, don't need no help. We keep on rising.
All right. Welcome back to Unlocking Commerce in Business. I'm your hostess, Connie Davis. And if you're new here, we always talk about what holds commerce back, the blocks and the barriers and the systems that were built for some of us and not all of us. That is the theme of the show. And we always talk about commerce as the full exchange of human value, not just money, not just transactions, everything, all forms of capital. So my guest today is Dan Beech, and Dan is the managing partner of Beechworks, a managing consulting firm that he has been leading with 7 MBAs and a PhD candidate. What I'm really impressed by, though, is his background and the depth of his experience, guys. He has spent 25 years building companies across real estate and wealth management and lending and blockchain and healthcare. He's advised 4 billionaires, thought that was super impressive, managing 170 million in assets, and ran a real estate platform generating over 1.4 billion in sales. I think what's really key here, though, guys, is we're going to be talking about real world experiences and ways to use technology in the real communities that you and I live in. So today he's currently volunteering on boards of 2 nonprofits in Los Angeles, a food pantry and a federally qualified health clinic, both serving underserved communities. And you know that that's the intersection of where this show really gets into cognitive capacity to understand some of these new kind of heavy concepts that we're trying to learn and bring into communities. But Dan's also the founder of something I really am excited about today to kind of unpack for you. His new company called Archively. And what Archively does, what it actually does, we're going to get into, because I really see it as another form of unlocking the value that we're trying to exchange in the form of commerce. So what we're going to do today is we're going to unpack that solution a little bit. We're going to talk about Dan's story, and I want to hear all about, as I'm sure you do, what Dan's building, because it's not just a tech story. It's a trust story. And here, trust is the original currency. So Dan, welcome to the show. And I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow, that's an amazing introduction. I hope I can be a worthy guest and live up to such a great introduction. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, I love finding individuals just like you, Dan, that have a rich background. A lot of the times we have students and young entrepreneurs listening to the show. They are going through
Mm,
gauntlet right now, and you have walked that path for so many years. So today it's more about
true.
how we draw out some of that wisdom. And I want to get into some of the tech, but I want to start somewhere real with you first. Can you
Okay.
tell us about this college experience at 16? You started in finance and accounting, and I had a young man on the show a few weeks back just getting into entrepreneurship through acquisition, working with a colleague and a community of mine called Synergy, which is great. But he's starting to figure out how to really talk to people. So
Mm,
what was some of those aha moments that you had at a young age, and how did that kind of propel your journey forward?
wow. It's a little bit luck and I guess a little bit hard work. My mom had, uh, we were living in Georgia at the time, and my mom had gotten accepted for the PhD program at the University of Southern Alabama. She's a teacher focused on gifted students. So I really grew up in this household of this was her greatest gift, I think she gave to me, is the really just the love of learning, which is to be curious about the world, Why does this work that way? Why is this not working better? And what are the little mechanics? I think I was probably 4 years old. No, it can't be 4 years old. At least 6 years old, kindergarten. And I was already opening up. I'd gotten the gift of a radio, and I was already unscrewing the back panel so I could understand what's inside this thing. How is it working? So I kind of had that gift of a childhood, and we just kind of got lucky. So we were moving from one state to another, and the new state, Alabama, had different requirements on um, how you could transfer into the college. And I guess maybe we had a little bit of a unique connection because of my mom going to the PhD program. And um, basically, the high school then in Mobile, Alabama, and the university in Mobile kind of said, well, if the university said, if you can test in, we'll accept you. And the high school said, if you can get accepted, then we'll release you. So it just kind of worked out great and started at 16. At the time, I kind of just picked finance and accounting. At 16, I had no idea what I wanted to do, but um, that was kind of the basis for
They kind of supported
where
you.
I'm at today.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it became this platform and springboard, it sounds like. And you had this tinkering ability for kind of seeing like how systems came together, and then you look at the money movement. Wow, that's quite a journey. Thank you for sharing that story with us about your background and kind of how you leaped into this world of, finance and accounting and business systems. I think that when we have these abilities to see how systems are built, a lot of the systems these days, especially in digital, very invisible. We talk about money. Money's become really invisible, and how we
mm,
move money, and exchange goods and services between one another in a very digital world. And I think that's about where we're going to probably cross in here now to your Archively story. So are you ready
great.
to kind of dive into your solution and what you've built there?
Let's go.
All right. So we're going to set the stage a little bit, because what I really thought about as we did our pre kind of call and we started talking
Mm,
about what is Archively, and my brain kind of got thinking about, in me being in financial services, very similar to you with some of the
mm,
ways that systems kind of set things up, is people are moving so much information, and sometimes their most important records, whether it's medical or legal or financial, all the things, I'm sure you're going to tell us all about it, but they're moving it around systems that could have a single point of failure, centralized systems that they
multiple.
don't know anything
Yeah.
about.
Hmm.
And so tell me, what was the impetus behind, like, what's the catalyst behind Archively for you? Like, what was that aha moment that you said, I got to build something different?
Yeah, great question. I think, again, really just right time, right person, right circumstances. So, running the wealth management practice, we were really focused on pretty high net worth people. And it just kept coming up time and time again that there were points of failure, as you're saying, after the family leader passed away, or maybe it was even just dementia, or Alzheimer's, something like that, where there was this just always this really messy period of time between the the event, usually it's passing away, and when the family can sort of move on cleanly. There's this real gap, and it touches almost every single family to some extreme or the other. On the worst cases, those are the ones we hear about in the news, that
Yeah.
some celebrity is fighting over assets or whatever. Um, but even on the minor side, on the less impact side, maybe is a better way to say that. There's so many stories of um, the family wasn't fighting about assets, but the dad had designated the sister as the executor of the estate. She was doing her best to fulfill that role, big responsibility, but the brother just wasn't happy and he thought dad meant one thing, she thought dad meant another thing. They end up not talking for 5 years, right? Like, so there's, and then all points in between that. And so in my position, I sort of had the luxury, the, the, the good fortune of interacting with lots of estate planning attorneys. And so many conversations where we're all together as a team for the client's family, trying to pick up the pieces and solve all of this. And so we've seen it from the inside that there was really no solution. And so what we've built to solve this problem is Archively. And Archively is a tool. It's super cool. We can geek out about the blockchain technology, but really it's the story. I'm glad you framed it this way earlier. It's really the story of one generation transitioning their whole life to the next generation. And how can we smooth that out and reduce all of those points of failure that are, you know, so problematic now?
Yeah, and so the pain and the gap is where this show specifically focuses
Mm,
because it could be an emotional gap, like I have
yes,
wounds around my money and my assets and not being able to kind of go and do what I need to do because something that's happened to me. It could be a
right.
system that's doing that, but you're talking about an intersection of things that happen every single day. Like that's not theoretical. That is homes and healthcare access records. It could be a life-changing decision at a doctor's office because somebody's power of attorney isn't updated. That's their
Yep.
identity. And what are the decisions and choices that I'd
Or
want
couldn't find it.
to make? And I'm in fight,
Yep.
flight, or freeze mode, and somebody
Mm,
can't make those. I've actually been there in some of my story background. And those
wow.
are hard moments, those are hard moments. So how does this cross into your highly regulated industries, because you've been in those industries for 25 years in real estate and lending and wealth management. And when that record doesn't hold, what kind of chain of events happen? And how is, let's dive into a little bit of where the tech meets that chain of events.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Um, I'll give you one example. And every state is a little bit different, but in California, for example, there is a difference between, as far as a probate court is concerned, there is a difference between a certified copy, trust, will, whatever document, certified copy, and duplicate original.
Mm,
And you're only allowed to have one duplicate original. You can have the original, and then you can have the one copy that's designated as the duplicate. Anything beyond that in, invalidates those two. If you have three, then now you've broken that whole chain. So um, that is a distinction that people just are not aware of, and it creates the situation where you think you're being prudent, you're making you're leaving a copy with your attorney, you have a copy in your safe deposit box, you give one, to your daughter, whoever else, right? Now all of these redundancies of copies, which seems to be a prudent thing to do, has just created a situation where that document is not admissible in court anymore because
mm,
it's gone beyond duplicate original. So building on blockchain, certifying, having your attorney or having it notarized, certifying as a duplicate original, then we can show the court um, that this was never altered. Cousin Joe didn't change page 35 on your 100-page trust. You could have a 100-page trust. It's notarized and certified by the attorney. and someone comes along and change one page, how would you know? So blockchain solves that problem. There's no disputing that this is the original document and it has never been altered.
Okay, so we're going to unpack that a little bit because what I have always tried to do with guests that come on like you that can talk about blockchain is take
Mm,
people into the basic environment of I've never heard blockchain before. Help me
okay.
understand how the heck it, plugs into what I know and I have been through or what I'm being told by everyday people in my community. And you just did that. So, and I don't want to oversimplify because I'm hoping that our audience, if you're listening, you're kind of clocking with what Dan's saying because we hear about that. We hear about people that are fortunate enough to have those types of documents and to know the process, be somewhat educated, or have the
Right.
dollars, the capital to invest in the advisors that need that. But then there's a whole sector of community members that don't have that knowledge, that don't have that cognitive ability and or the advisors to guide them. And I can imagine that getting so much more, like just more complicated for them.
Well, it's not actually. The way I would explain it, and we could go into more technical detail if you wish, but everyone now is pretty familiar with the concept of cloud storage, right? If you have an iPhone, you've got your photos are backed up to the cloud. Everyone kind of knows Dropbox or the equivalent. And what you're doing really is instead of storing your photos or your documents on your local hard drive of your phone or your computer, you're using a computer somewhere else that's managed by whatever entity, Dropbox, Apple, something like that.
Mhm.
So you're really just replacing another computer with yours, and they're the ones in charge of backing it up and making sure that it's always running. So take that concept and sort of multiply it times 10,000.
Mhm.
So that's a blockchain. So the blockchain we're using, for example, is the same concept. You're really storing it on another computer, but it's not just one server of Amazon or Dropbox. It's 10,000 computers all around the world. They are constantly checking in with each other. Here's my copy of the document. Does it match your copy? Does it match your copy? Does it match your copy? And if any one of those gets changed, then the other 999,000 replace the, the problem document. So it can never be changed. Um, it's not under the control of any one company. So I don't know if you guys have use Microsoft. We had Microsoft go down for 3 days recently. Microsoft Outlook. AWS as servers goes down constantly. So 10,000 computers not going to go down. Not under the control of any one government or jurisdiction even. So um, that's the simplest way I can explain blockchain. Hopefully that
I
resonates.
I think it was probably one of the best explanations I've heard because sometimes I think,
Hmm.
I've sat with, different crypto and blockchain experts in here in the Tampa Bay area. And a lot of the times they say, people, we're not reaching the new people. And then you go and you have a conversation on the street, and some people are just going, I can't understand the lingo. So what I really appreciate what you just did
Mm.
is you're like, let's put this into relatable terms with tools and technology or computer systems that the most, kind of the least sophisticated person probably has at least heard
At
or
least on their phone. Yeah.
yeah, at least on your phone. So thank you for doing that because I think that that gets us into a more relatable way that these documents with, the witnessing and the certified documentation that we kind of have to be careful of. I didn't even know that you had to have a certified document and that it's only, so I think you're getting into some of that depth of expertise just from the world of where you've been and how you can use that to create a solution that's more usable by everybody, down to the probably the least sophisticated person.
Yeah. Yeah. And what we're doing also is we're pairing a document It's optional if for the people that want to do this, but we're giving the ability to make a recording, a voice memo, a video memo, because one of the things that we saw a lot is, okay, you've met with your attorney, you guys have spent months going through an analysis, and you've written this very careful trust document. Here's exactly the plan that I have for my family after something happens to me. And it's all custom written, but what we would then see is so many times families in probate court were fighting over what this particular clause meant. Like, the brother would say, well, dad meant this, and the
Oh,
sister would say, well, that's not. And so what ends up happening is the probate judge is the one that's deciding the future of your family and what you meant or didn't mean, and they're doing the best that they can do,
yeah.
but you're really you're handing off that authority to a third party that hopefully has the best interest of, your family in mind. So we're able to create the video where you as the family leader can say, here's what I mean by this. This is my intention for this asset. I want this to go, to this person, and here's why.
So there's no debate and there's just clarity. And clarity brings
Yeah,
a lot of peace, especially for families at times like that when someone's incapacitated or no longer here because they've transitioned over. So, what a gift!
right.
What a gift. So let's talk about why this ownership, this sense of ownership of documents. And I think we've already gone through a lot of the pain as to why you created Archively. And
Right.
who's it for? Like, how do you want to get it out there? What type of organization is your partner or should be hearing about this that might be able to do something innovative in their community with a tool like this?
Well, we've struggled a little bit reaching the end consumer because it's one of those things that, everyone recognizes probate bad. Fighting over assets is bad, and people lose time and money, and families are broken up. But most people think that's a tomorrow problem, or um, my family is so tight knit, we're not going to fight over stuff, or maybe even just a resistance to thinking about death at all. It's just an uncomfortable topic. So there's there's not a lot of urgency around that for so many people. So where we've really started is through estate planning attorneys who, in my capacity, we were the ones that are constantly trying to clean up the problems that it wasn't the bad planning. People are very intentional about their planning. It's the lack of access and the disjointed communication. That's where the problems start. And so that's where we're sort of partnering is with estate planning attorney firms. But
Mhm.
I really see um, a pathway for some nonprofits to help everybody else.
Yeah.
There's this whole cohort of the populace, like you said, that aren't necessarily in the place to spend money on, um, you know, attorneys to plan these things. And there's some middle ground. There's DIY solutions. But what if you just wanted to leave what if it's about grief? Most people are focused on solving the asset problem,
Mhm.
and that's a logistical thing with paper. Broken, we're fixing it, but still, what about just the emotional transition? What if you could have a solution where, you know, you're a mom and your 3-year-old daughter is playing on the swings in the park, and this is a really precious moment to you that you want to capture and hand that off to your, to your daughter or your family in your voice
Mm.
50 years from now? How can you know that the solution will exist in 50 years and provide this grief transfer um, resolution, in your own voice? So that's that's something that we're really excited to tackle next. We've
Yeah.
solved the logistical paperwork problem. Next is trying to provide that transition of grief.
Interesting. Well,
Yeah,
and I'll share a little bit about my story. So, when you started kind of going through the pain process, I was that, that widow, and that moment where it's like, okay, I've got teenagers to take care of, an estate from my late husband to kind of unravel. Whether there
right.
was no will, there was no trust, but it's like, how do we do all of
Yeah,
this? Very uninformed as far as the process in the middle of all of the grief. So,
right.
it's part of my personal story. And I've talked about that on this show too, in a couple of different
Mm,
recordings where it's like, you start relating these experiences where records hold power. And the records that you need to have when you're trying to find them, and you've got that cognitive load going on, that
right.
emotional labor, that's really where you need the trail to kind of do that work for you. And I think that there's a ton of value in being able to exchange those records as a form of healing. I'll call it healing commerce, right? Because that's what we're
Mm,
trying to do, so that I can get
I like
from
that.
this chapter that's just closed to the next chapter. And people need to do that at their own pace. And some of them can do it really well, and some of them just really need extra people to lean on. So when the system can come in and do that, I think that's a huge gift, again, that you've accomplished with Archively. So let's
Thank you.
when we go into community ownership. So you mentioned nonprofits. Are there specific, I mean, besides like the grief, I think there's like hospital and hospice. If you're out there listening, guys, like, start racking your brains to be thinking about where these types of documentations show up in your world and in your businesses, because I think that if you start thinking about plugging blockchain in, most people keep it at bay. They're like, I don't know what this is, and I don't know where this plugs in. But what we're trying to do in today's show is really help you see where it can meet you where you are. We use that term a lot with technology. We want to meet people where they are with the technology to solve a problem that we can't always articulate. So, what are some of the responses, Dan, for where you've gotten this implemented, or you have like some really enthusiastic client opportunities? What have they been saying? I want to hear like what the response has been.
It's really gratifying. We had, I'll give you an example. Maybe this will resonate with you. One of the attorney partners is also in Florida. Actually, I should introduce you guys. He's an amazing guy. Um, One of my favorite stories that he related is um, a widow. They had gone through as a family all of the planning, plenty of assets. Um, all the documentation was done and produced. Um, the husband dies, and now the widow, um, they couldn't find the documents. The widow is completely, not only the grief component that you're talking about, but she's unable to just buy groceries. All of her accounts are locked. They have plenty of money, everything's locked. She's behind on her mortgage. Right now, she's at risk of losing everything when they literally have plenty of money. And um, the family was looking for something else. It was just accidentally they came across the trust documents in a drawer in the boat at the harbor.
Oh my
And it
gosh.
took 3 months. The widow is borrowing money to buy groceries. It's that's kind of the real impact of a real life story um, that we're able to solve, because the documents get released um, to to the people that you've designated when you've designated for them to go. And there's just no confusion. Everybody knows what their what their role can be. If it's also a lot of families, my family was like this. Nobody really talked about money. It was kind of an uncomfortable thing to discuss.
Yeah.
This sort of solves that as well because you can leave your messages to, not only your farewell message, but here's why I made this decision. Here's why I decided to give the piano to this person and not the other person. Um, so hopefully we're solving a lot of those kind of problems.
Yeah, and it's also in a it's a different definition of DeFi, right? So we hear of DeFi and decentralized finance, but I think of like this is decentralized instructions that's not dependent on my family to try to remember to deliver at a difficult time or at a time when, it could be even an emergency where there's like a natural disaster and documentations in homes have been
Yes,
completely destroyed. And that was sitting at the boat, and the boat goes through a hurricane, in the harbor.
right.
And all of a sudden, that trust document is gone. So now you've got compounding issues. So I think there's a lot in that disaster recovery space too that you guys could, think about. That's really deep in the nonprofit space too. If I just gave, thinking of what I've heard over the last several years. Um, but so can you take us through the tech a little bit? Is this I'm holding this on my phone or am I leading this through my financial planner? Is it pretty like self-sufficient type of an experience, or I'm working with someone else?
It could be either. Right now, we're rolled out for you as the consumer can just access the website directly, or through your attorney partner. Um, or a third option is kind of we'll do it for you. A lot of people struggle with the tech of, um, you know, like it can get
Mm,
pretty detailed, right? Like say for example, we have some people who say, well, I would like, these are my assets, and I would like my brother to have these if something happens to me, but not before. I don't really want him to know exactly how much money I have in the bank at the moment. Or I want my kids to have access to this, but not until they're 18, um, something like that. So there's lots of those little trigger points that we can set up into the software, and we can set those for you. So if someone's overwhelmed by the prospect of doing all of that, we can do that for you. The attorney partners can also do that for you. We're probably cheaper than the per hour of the attorney. But if someone's inclined, they absolutely can just set all this stuff up for themselves. And um, I think the reason why we chose blockchain is because um, I maybe your audience is different. In most circumstances, I'm talking about um, the continuity of one generation to the other generation, and I sort of de-emphasize the tech because it can be overwhelming. But really, if you think about it, the solution that most people are using is something like Dropbox. Dropbox started in 2007. It's already 20 years old.
yeah.
It's great that you're using it, but really when it's needed is, I guess everyone's different, but 20, 30 years from now. 30 years from now, Dropbox is going to be 50-year-old technology.
Mm,
That's the equivalent of you storing your family photos on a floppy disk drive. Floppy disks are 50 years old today. It's it's absurd to think that you would entrust your family's future on technology that old. So we're really just taking advantage of the tools that we have today. We're using the latest technology, and it happens to come with the benefit of all of this security, the immutable nature, um, the decentralized, no one person owns your data, and we encrypt it, so it's secured first. Um, yeah, it's really, really powerful.
Yeah. It's almost like could we think about archivally as the next generation of the digital notary? Like, could we think of it that way?
I would love to do that when on so we're on phase 2 of our development roadmap, and I'll no one else really knows this until your show. I think it's on phase 3 or 4. We have integrating 24/7 access,
Okay.
notary access. When we were doing our customer discovery, one of our approaches is we want to build a solution that actually solves people's problems, not, hey, let's imagine, and we did have insight into how to solve these problems, but um, I don't want to spend time and money building a feature that no one really wants,
Right.
and we've missed the opportunity to build a feature that they really did want. So we did lots of customer interviews and surveys and stuff, and one of the things that we were surprised about was 90% of the people said exactly what you just said. Having an online on-demand notary would be important to them. 90%. Um, another, also 90% was like an on-demand attorney to sort of review and just bounce is this okay? Did I do it right?
Yeah.
Those kind of questions. So those are both things that are on the roadmap to be included into the software down the line.
I think that's super cool, and I use a phrase on the show. I've talked about it a lot, actually, and most people look at me like, "What are you talking about?" But I say the words trauma informed technology a lot.
Mm,
And to me, you just connected grief a little bit ago. We're
yeah,
talking about like, I'm not, myself, when I'm going through a period of change like that and I'm switching chapters, whether it's, known and planned or not known and it's a surprise, and loss affects everybody differently at different points in their life. But to be trauma informed means I've thought about those types of situations that are really difficult for people to kind of go through, but then I've built technology for a purpose. And
right.
I think we build technology a lot for profit, to profit, and you create a SaaS product and you send it out into the world. And okay, I'll get to the releases and based on what's going to make the company the most money. But what I'm hearing, Dan, is I'm hearing more of we want to be intentional with the features that our, users are going to need. They're thinking ahead, they're worried about something, so we want to help kind of meet them again where they are. And that's really where the human side, and I know you do a lot of work with nonprofits and community. That's the human side of where I think you're showing up from, just your depth and years of
Mm,
listening to people talk about where their bottlenecks and barriers are in communities. And I think it's an untapped area that technology companies, and I've certainly been encouraging this over the last 6 years as I've been kind of exploring between nonprofits and financial technology, especially. And there's this bridge that we can build with blockchain getting out in there into the community for good. So, can let's talk a little bit about these family healthcare resources and the food pantry. And did that inform anything? Because I mean, the conversations you've had with the billionaires and the patent pending technologists and the MBAs, like what's running through their minds as they're thinking about the technology that you build and the advisory and management firm that you have?
oh, yeah, thanks for asking that question. Well, hopefully I've assembled a team that is not only, super smart, much smarter than me, and very talented, but also really just good people at heart.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of people that I prefer to work around. So hopefully they all seem to be so far. So I think that's kind of where it starts, where um, it's an easy thing for us to align around as a team to focus on not only the tech but really the bigger mission. Um, and absolutely working in the nonprofits where you just see people that are really struggling that, just this bag of food, which maybe, we're so fortunate we wouldn't even give it a second thought. It is a huge impact for them and their kids and their family. And then the opposite extreme where people don't even have to, they have so many zeros in their account that they, anything that they spend would be meaningless. It's, it, it's a great reminder for me personally, um, of the humanity of where we all are. Um, and some of us just happen to be luckier from where we were born or, the circumstances of our lives. Certainly people have earned things that they have as well. I'm not trying to diminish that, but um, yeah, we try to really never lose sight of the humanity is really what we're trying to help. There's a great book that just came out. I'm not plugging someone else's book, but it reminded me as you were just forming this last question. It's called Incorruptible by Eric Rice, and
Mm.
he's super important to us in our organization because he's written a couple of books that are really meaningful for entrepreneurs starting their businesses. The Mom Test, the Lean Startup, those are those methodologies are part of what we do every day, so super meaningful. But this new book is a study of how companies are formed originally with a real purpose, and somehow it gets lost along the line, um, and the so, making the shareholders happy ends up being the um, the primary goal. I mean, think of I think it was Amazon that says, don't do any harm, just do good. And so there's this this book is a is how to form your companies so that you can protect that core mission. Um, and it really just came out. He was just here in LA from a book launch, so I was super lucky to be at his presentation. A friend of mine invited me, but um, like Patagonia is a good example in the book. How they have created a governing, like we're all familiar with the concept of board of directors, but Patagonia has a separate board of trustees. Their whole responsibility is to make sure that the company doesn't deviate from its moral vision, and they have the authority and the power to control the decisions to make sure that that stays on track. So we're really excited as Archively. We're still early enough in our formation stage that we're able to include those kind of it's called a PPT trust, purpose. Oh boy, now I'm on the spot. I can't remember it. Purpose protection trust, I think, is what it is. Um, but the whole goal is to hopefully we're protecting our mission uh, of helping people first going forward.
I love that. And I think that, that perpetuity, that intention, that's where, I mean, in the blockchain terms, we hear of a DAO, right? We hear of a decentralized autonomous organization for those of you that don't know what a DAO is. But, there's just different models out there that challenge the status quo, that give us new ways of thinking about how intentionally humans can build an entity that is circled around trust. And that's why I bring up nonprofits so much on this
Mm,
show, because they are, whether we see them or not as private, companies, as economic actors, they are. And they're not charity cases. They do give out, resources to the community, but they're actually serving a really important place of value exchange. And I don't think they get enough gratitude and appreciation in the economic footprint of a community as the actors that they are, because they generate the trust infrastructure. And one of the use cases I wanted to talk to you
mm,
about briefly is I have a young woman. She's been a mentee of mine for several years. I met her at a local food pantry that was actually doing work with human trafficking survivors. She is
Wow.
a foster youth. And as a foster youth, she has no paperwork, Dan. She has, a stack of adoption papers and foster care kind of like case files. But her paperwork, I mean, she's been a ward of the states and she was 3. So you
Wow.
think of like someone like that doesn't even know where her original documentations are or the importance of those documents, but doesn't even understand her file. And those are individuals that technology like this could be a game changer in the hands of a nonprofit. Economic actors that are helping with financial literacy, that are helping build trust to help people get back on their feet, reestablish the trust, and then economically stabilize themselves. That's a ripple effect.
I
And
would
when
love
we
to
can
explore that.
yeah, and when we get that kind of a ripple effect in front of us as technology companies and technologists, we can create one of two directions: extraction or expansion.
Mhm.
And or we can call it compression or constriction, whatever the words are. There are words that really fuel people. And I think that that's why I resonated with Archively. So I'm really glad that you had some time to kind of sit with us today and talk about the solution, because I don't see it as a service. I see it as a full exchange of human value, past, present, and future. And it's really important to help people move when they need to move, with whatever capital form or, commerce form that takes. So,
Thank
yeah.
you. It's
Yeah.
been an amazing,
Thank you for your
amazing gift to have this discussion.
Yeah, thank you for your work. Do you have any parting thoughts? Like, who are you looking for out in the audience, and how do you want them to contact you if they hear something today? And what next steps do you want them to take?
Yeah, thank you. I think reach out on our beechworks.com site. It's WERKS, Beechworks. Um, and any any connections are welcomed. We love the the feedback, um, the good ideas. We would love to align with some nonprofits. It's something that was in my mind anyway to, kind of um, allocate a percentage of revenues towards something like that. Um, and yeah, anybody else that just has a great path for how we can connect and help one generation pass uh, their lives to the next would be amazing.
All right. Well, Dan, thank you for the conversation today and for the heart that you've put into this technology. Truly rare to find someone like a technologist that is as trauma informed as, and intentional and putting that into the technology. So thank you for the work that you and your team are doing and for being on the show with us. I hope
Thanks
that
for having me.
if you guys are listening, man, share this episode, forward it on to some folks. This is a pain point, whether we've been through it in the past or we know we're all headed to that, that
Hmm.
same place. We're not here forever on this planet, but maybe we can make that next legacy a lot smoother for the generations to come. So thank you for being here. All
Thanks for
right.
having me.
Thank you for listening to Unlocking Commerce and Business. If this conversation resonated, here's what you can do. Subscribe for weekly conversations with survivors, innovators, and change makers, building regenerative alternatives to extractive commerce. Share this episode with collaborators, partners, funders, and change makers in your network. The people ready for restorative commerce need to hear these voices. Drop a comment below. Tell us what patterns you're recognizing or what solutions you're building. We read every one. Commerce is everywhere, and healing extraction patterns inside our communities creates regenerative commerce outside. Like a lighthouse, we're here, exploring and cutting through fog, pointing toward what works. Welcome to the era of restorative commerce. Until next time, explore courageously, build sovereignly. You are the source and store of value. This is Connie Davis signing off. Thank you for being here.